Welcome one, welcome all. Welcome to another exciting episode of Tales of Citizens right here on the Sound Strategy Network. I am Bridger. I will be bringing to you our Star Citizen podcast today where we ask the deep questions. And we have been away for a very long time, on hiatus for over 3-4 months. It's been way too long. We're back. We're officially back on our bi-weekly schedule. You can catch us here live recording every Sunday at 7 p.m., give or take, Eastern Time. But I couldn't be doing this. We couldn't be answering the deep questions without my co-pilots here. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Mr. Calathulu here on the left. Welcome, sir.
Howdy, everybody. It's good to be back. It's been a good long time.
All right, indeed. And we also have, as always, our good friend Gray. Welcome, sir.
How's it going?
So we are back, and mostly it's my fault that we were gone for so long, but it is totally worth it because we have a great new studio set up here. You can see that not one piece of my desk is visible. Yeah, that's brilliant. That's like the only upgrade that any of the users can actually see in all this thing. But I think I was showing this to somebody else before. Look, we got a big old green screen, and we don't have to take 10 hours to set it up. It's brilliant. Okay, enough of that. Let's get to Star Citizen. So, Life in the Verse is usually a segment where we talk a little bit about what we've been doing while we've been waiting for Star Citizen. We have so much stuff to talk about. I'm just going to skip my whole thing and say I was fixing up the basement. It was hard. It took a lot longer than I thought, and it cost a lot more than I wanted it to, which is basically every project in the world, which is also like space projects, right? So there you go. So yes. I'm going to just pass and say, Callie, what have you been doing recently?
Well, since we last had our show, Beyond Earth came out, which is an awesome strategy game. I've been having fun with that. I picked
gonna have to disagree with you, but that's an entirely different conversation that we will have to wait for another show for. So go ahead.
More on topic. I picked up a Thrustmaster Warthog.
When did you win the lottery?
Sale. I very carefully been saving up for some time to get the desk I always wanted, and that includes this bad boy, which weighs, I kid you not, like 1,000 pounds. But yeah, Amazon had a sale penetration. For the first time in years, so I had to do it. Picked it up, and then, of course, a week later, they had another sale, which included some pedals for a better overall price. So I was annoyed myself, but I'll live. And other than that, just we commented earlier, just running. Zombies Run, in case anyone wants to start a little cardiovascular routine. Awesome little app for the
that's the one
Android
where you get on
iPhone.
Your phone and it tells you that the zombies are behind you or something and you have to run away from them.
Exactly right.
In order to, you have to meet your fitness. I've actually got a new Google Nexus 5 and it has Google Fit, which keeps track of the steps. So every once in a while I'll get a bling, I'll be like, what? You've met your goal for today. Awesome!
What goal?
Your goal was to walk for an hour over the course of the entire day.
You know, the other part about Google Fit, if you've got a smartwatch, like one of these right here, it will actually check your pulse for you. So I did a little testing, and it turns out they, within about 2 beats per minute to what the doctor said I had for my resting heart rate. So
pretty
not
accurate.
bad.
All right, Gray, what have you been up to recently?
Well, not a whole lot. I've actually been playing some of the old TIE Fighter game, if you guys remember that from the 90s.
How did you get that running?
Beautiful. They actually have a thing called goodoldgames.com. I'm plugging them right now.
Huh?
Isn't it GOG.com or something like that?
GOG, yeah. They actually redid both the TIE Fighter games completely, so you can just play them. So I did. I've been screwing around with it. Other than that, when I've been feeling particularly masochistic, a little bit of League of Legends and or Smite. Smite because you don't want to hear people talk, you just want to hear them do a spam laugh noise.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So,
not bad.
I've decided to lower my own volume a lot lower than it normally would be because I'm way too loud is what it comes down to. So if I'm a little quiet, you guys can tell me, but I'm just trying to avoid being too loud when I'm later. You know, far too loud. So, and that happens often, especially when we rant. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about today, but before we get anywhere, I did want to point out that we got a new segment coming to the show next week. We're going to start a new segment called Spectrum Analysis. Spectrum Analysis is going to be where we take one of the in-fiction stories from the Star Citizen website and do sort of a book review, almost. Have a little book club, but instead of it being, you know, Pride and Prejudice, it's more like the what is it? The Kid Crimson or one of the other ones that are in there. They're really great. And next week, your homework my fair audience, is to read Kid Crimson. Tales of Kid Crimson. I would recommend it, even if we weren't doing this segment, because it's a really great, fun little story, and it gives you a kind of insight into the Star Citizen universe. So definitely check that out, because we are going to be talking about it with spoilers on the next show, which is going to be December 21st. So
these are really good reading, guys. They put a lot of effort into these, and it's worth taking half an hour or whatever it is to read the short story on these things. You know, pull it up on your phone or your tablet before bed. It's worth it.
Yep, and it's 10 chapters, and each chapter is like a screen and a half or 2 screens, so it doesn't even take that long to go through. It's like 20 minutes. Yeah. It's really good. No. There's one that's like got an Indiana Jones type character. Kid Crimson is basically Han Solo. I think we can all agree on that. But we'll be discussing more of those things later next week. For now, we've got a lot to talk about today, but the first thing I want to talk about is that there's a new core design article, and that is sort of like Death of a Spaceman, but instead it's the healing of a spaceman. So you guys saw this. It came out, I think, last week, and there's a lot of interesting things, but the first thing that occurred to me is the more realistic reactions in combat. So you're taking a bunch of damage and slowly bleeding out, but that might actually result in you wanting to flee and leave. Yeah. You don't actually really ever see that in a game, because if you're already committed to the fight, you might as well just die and respawn in almost every game. The problem with that, of course, is while it's more realistic and it would be really immersive to see enemy players actually cut their losses, get back in their boarding ship, and flee, that's not very fun for those players. It feels very not heroic and not cool. Like, the whole point of this is supposed to be like a cool guy. So, I don't know, do you think people are going to deal with that well?
Well, yeah. I mean, in games now, like Rainbow Six, for example, is a great like first-person shooter where when you like get injured or die, your performance is reduced. People play it super smart. They set up ambushes. They wait, and with a more permanent result, such as like what we would see from the combat system where you're going to bleed out. I mean, people will not be willing to totally commit to a fight if they think they might lose progress in the character or not just be able to respawn in. So it'll take them 3 hours to get back to, Starbase Alpha. So it will be interesting to see. I'm really curious how peripheral choice will play into that. For example, if you're a user in Arma, you can lean your head forward and you can look around corners. And if you're able to do that in the Star Citizen FPS, and I can think of no reason why you can't, especially since Arma is one of those things they say they're taking their inspiration from, you might actually have big advantages with people that have the right peripherals set up.
That's true.
Absolutely.
Gray, your thoughts?
I think in a lot of ways the most serious death penalties, so to speak, for your average non-role-playing player is in fact going to be being taken out of the fight. The idea that, if you die, your next of kin is not going to be respawning on the spaceship next to where you just launched in, or whatever that happens to be. It does give you much more of that feeling of like Rainbow Six, where if somebody died in the middle of an operation, like died, not injured, died, they're gone. You no longer have the ability to use that person. You're down a man for the rest of the op. I think that this is just in and of itself, regardless of the death of a spaceman part, going to be the primary motivator for people not to kamikaze in this. Knowing that if they run in and they die, completely gone, incapacitated to the point where their little med kit can't help, you're basically looking at putting your team a man down. And that's a really, really strong mechanic for them to put in. It's meaningful. It says that if you do something that's really stupid, or somebody really pulls something over on you, take your pick, it's going to matter, and your teammates are going to get hurt for it. If you have a medbay nearby, I don't think that you're going to see quite as much of a penalty for just getting shot in the leg and trying to bleed out, because someone's going to drag you over to your MISC Reliant, or whatever the thing called, the big one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
or
Or
whatever
the
your capital ship
Cutlass
has.
Red
Yeah, your
is the
Cutlass
ambulance.
or you name it. If you've got a med bed, at least that gives the opportunity to say, okay, we can bring this person back, but it forces somebody to bring you back.
Well, I
It
think it could
means
be
that your
worse than that.
operation's down 2 people for a short period of time.
That's
Well, it may
true.
be
Um,
worse than that, because if you're bleeding out and you get dragged to a med bed, I mean, who's to say it won't take an hour and a half to patch somebody up?
I don't think that's going to be the
I
case.
I think it's going to take a lot shorter than that.
Okay, all right.
To be blunt, I think if you take the time to bring a med bed, RSI is not going to really penalize you that hard.
Okay.
Um, I think that there will be a little bit of a time delay,
They've
but
already
uh,
said that essentially,
yeah.
say your ship is blown up, but your cockpit sort of ejected your almost dead corpse. Now, they don't want you to have to literally wait there until somebody comes and rescues your character, be it NPC
Fair
or
enough.
PC. So what they are going to do is they're going to leave that actual body there and make it just a generic person. It's no longer going to be you, but the consequences of you getting blown up means there's actually somebody there to rescue. So a player or an NPC can come across that and try to rescue it or what have you. But you are immediately, or after a very short delay, I'm guessing like 30 seconds maybe, you'll wind up waking up in a hospital bed. So there'll be some like time compression for you in comparison to everyone else. So for you, they're just going to assume that you were rescued and jumped to a hospital bed, unless, of course, it's your final quote-unquote death of that particular character. Now, you guys brought up an interesting point, is that, you know, if you have a med bay or the equivalent on a ship nearby, and say you're assaulting a station, and we have the FPS mechanics and things like that, and you go down. Now, let's take the firefight that they sort of showed off at what was that, PAX Australia, that they showed it off recently.
Yep.
So they're both sort of on a side of a room, and they're having a shootout. Now, one side starts to take casualties and sort of pulls back a little bit to a hallway that's thinner, but they have to leave their casualties behind. The other side takes some casualties too, but because they won the fight overall, they get to sort of drag their casualties back to safety and get them med-bayed up. So what that kind of leads to is that sort of slippery slope problem where the very first moment of any given battle, the first 30 seconds matter more than any other part of the battle, and it's a foregone conclusion after you've lost 2 or 3 guys and they've lost 2 or 3 guys, but you're forced to pull back and they're not, that they're just going to get those guys respawning in fairly soon because they're bringing into the med bay in the ship that's attached to the current station, you know, so they're going to come back in 3 minutes, and now you've got a clock until those guys come back.
I think there's a couple of things to note about that. The first thing is if your station that you own or your ship that you own that's being invaded by an enemy group doesn't have a med bay, you're at a disadvantage already, and either you've put yourself there or you're in a position where the gameplay is
I don't mean to say that
you
one side has a med bay and one side doesn't, but whichever side retreats first is essentially giving up all their characters who fell to dead. And it means that those characters aren't going to be respawning. Those characters are going to come back in like a half hour from their med bay, like some other side of the system.
Well,
and
sure,
the
but
guys who
that assumes
advance pick up their guys, get them in a med bay, and they're back in 3 minutes.
Well, that assumes a lot of things about, you know, dragging somebody back is a dangerous process. It's slow. It will probably make noise. If I had to take a wild guess, if you see somebody starting to drag, that's... think of it in League of Legends terms. You see somebody trying to take a map objective, even if you're down, you try to disrupt.
Yeah.
And in Star Citizen, disrupt might mean you throw a frag grenade directly into the middle of the people who think they're advancing. There's a lot of opportunities for play and counterplay here. And I agree with you. The first person who loses a fight, like legitimately loses, somebody is, you know, down on the ground, bleeding out, needs to be taken to a bay, and they can't. That's a disadvantage. But to get to that point, you have to have already basically lost something. And the idea of saying, well, we lost, but it shouldn't really be a loss, I kind of disagree with in this case. I think if we're looking at a situation where if somebody gets shot, it's supposed to be meaningful. If you lose, you should lose. If there's a disadvantage that's being conveyed by you being shoved back further into the station and not being able to drag a person forward, That's a valid disadvantage. Now, at the same time, if you're trying to keep enough range from someone, let's say you're on an Idris and somebody boards your Idris, and you have a med bay. Well, what's to say, you've got a long corridor or something like that, your guy gets shot, you drag that person back. Oh, look, advantage defender. Your med bay was around the corner.
Yeah.
Unless they capture the medbay.
Unless they capture the med bay, in which case it's a question of how does taking over a ship work system by system.
So wait, it's just going to be like FTL, where you just put everybody in the med bay, and when the enemy comes in to fight you, you just heal while you're killing them.
I suspect that the mechanic won't work quite like FTL, where you can stand and fight, but yeah.
So
the other
Andreas in the chat brings up a really interesting point. He says, remember that medicines will have diminishing returns. The more you use medicines to heal a hurt limb, the less it will heal. And that was brilliant. So that's actually a good point. One thing I sort of wanted to bring up is it's not really very fun to spend a half hour getting everybody ready, getting in a boarding party, and then going into this battle and getting shot like that out of the blue as soon as you get on the ship. And, well, that was a fun half hour of getting ready. I'll just wait for this battle to end and wait another half hour to get in the next thing. But if you give everybody what amounts to, quote-unquote, a health bar that they can go down but be revived fairly easily the first time, and then less easy the next time, and then they're more debilitated the time after that, that actually seems like it's a decent sort of trade-off to where, if you get an unlucky headshot or chest shot really early, maybe you can still come back from it due to the fact they have futuristic armor and futuristic nanobots that can heal you, but you have those diminishing returns that means so that when you got shot and went down, it did actually mean something. It meant you were closer from being out of this fight permanently.
Well, and I actually wanted to just make a quick note.
Go for it.
Great comment by Carnifex. I apologize if I've butchered your name in Twitch chat, talking about with the death mechanic, scouting or scanning to find what enemy defenses are is actually going to be more important. That idea of saying the defender basically does have an advantage just by the fact that they are the defender, so they know the territory and they can scout more effectively. Absolutely true. And something that I think is missed on a lot of Unreal Tournament style or PlanetSide 2 or you name it, where it's very, I hate to use this word, just overly even. Almost overly balanced between the attackers and defenders, so far as location's concerned.
You asked me, anybody talks about PlanetSide 2, one of the first thing I said was, you can respawn so easily. The fights turn into these massive grinds where dying doesn't mean anything. Because dying means you go back 10 feet to the nearest Sunderer or to the nearest spawn portal if you're the defender. It basically takes an overwhelming amount of luck over the course of that grinder to happen to kill enough people fast enough and then happen to catch that same group coming out of the spawn with a grenade, for example, in order to push in and take up really good positions to murder them and then spawn camp them, basically. That's how you win a PlanetSide 2 fight, and that's really disappointing. I always was a fan of the idea that there should be like diminishing returns in terms of spawn rates. And the more people that were dying on your side, the longer your queue to get in the spawn would be. But anyway, that's entirely another thing. Star Citizen probably won't have anything like that problem.
No. It will not have nanites, let's be clear.
Because nanites.
Yeah, but the other thing that Star Citizen will have with the mechanics they're setting up is, I've talked about how, we've shot 2 people, we're going to push forward because we know they're at a disadvantage now. That's going to set up a ton of things like room clearing tactics, ambush points. When the attacker thinks they've got an advantage, they rush forward, and then the 6 defenders of the original 9 that are left gun them all down from behind. There's going to be a lot of that. Never mind what might be like entrenched defenses. They talked about that a long time ago. Things like anti-boarding turrets, for example, that are just sitting like in a hallway, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Let me get my other microphone out of the shot there because that looks a little bit ridiculous. So it's going to come down to, like Carnifex was talking about, scouting, tactics, strategy, real like room clearing ability. If you rush in and don't check that back corner, you will die. All of you will die. So
yeah, I'd love to see it turn into a sort of like what they tried to show at PAX, where they had everybody communicating in sort of that what is it called,
Oh.
brevity language, and they were trying to stay, you know,
God.
okay, you take the left, you take the right, go, and then they like go through the door trying to like. It felt very cool, like because everybody
was
wants
very
to be
hard to
those
listen
guys in the
to.
movies.
It was incredibly hard to listen to that.
Come on, I thought it was
full,
awesome.
Full power for what they were going for, but oh man, it hurt. Ah.
Concern, too serious.
I don't know. I heard him a couple of times almost breaking character because something crazy happened.
Yes.
All right. So there's a lot of interesting things to be done there, but I do want to cover a couple other things, and we're already a bit of the way in. Any final thoughts on this episode here? The healing of a spaceman. I mean, it did reveal some semi-new tidbits about the limb system, how each individual, actually the leg, like upper and lower leg, upper and lower arm are going to have their own like separate, like I don't know how you differentiate that. When your lower arm is damaged, how is that different from your upper arm being damaged? Do they have different consequences?
Well,
Or you can bench press less if
well, it may be if your lower arm is damaged, you can't carry as heavy a weapon so easily, so you have more sluggish reactions with a carbine instead of a pistol.
Or it could blow off your Moby glass.
Touche.
No, not the
Moba
Moby
glass. But mine was custom.
Custom. Actually, yeah, I need insurance for my custom Moby glass.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see. What else? There was another core design article basically that came out right before the show. The multi-cruise ship systems in the letter for the chairman for, what is it, 66 million now we're at?
Yeah.
Holy moly.
Yep.
That anniversary sale cleared, what, 4 million in that week? It was amazing.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
Just incredible.
No thanks to the javelins, by the way.
Oh, God. 1.8 seconds for the last sellout.
I can't
Good
believe
Lord.
how much money. And those were like account bound. Like they were trying to
there's no
prevent
selling
people
those.
from being
Well,
able to sell them. I mean, you can
let's
sell
try
the
that
whole
again.
account, but that seems very...
Yes.
Well,
Well,
it's
you
against
could
the
make an
TOS.
account, buy the ship with the one account, and then sell it. I mean, it's
I
not hard
guess,
to think
yeah.
around that one. But
You
then
have to be
the
pretty
thing
careful.
is,
If they
well, you have
find
to-
out,
yeah, they can just cancel the account. At which point your
Yeah.
$2,500 ship is null and void.
Yeah.
also whoever bought it, bigger problem, because they're not going to buy it for $2,500. They're going to buy it for more.
Oh, yeah.
And
Absolutely.
they're going to
Separate
lose more than
issue.
that.
There
All
is
right. So
Yeah.
let's take a
Ta-da.
look at now. So first thing, there's a couple of interesting things in this. The first thing they talked about is the increased ship modularity, and that got me thinking. Is there such a thing as too much modularity on these ships? Because they basically
No.
talked about how, we're going to change up so you can put any station in anywhere. Just got to change it, hardware, put in this here, there, no problem. Is there a downside?
I don't see a problem with it. The reason that I say no, just outright no to that, is that any station you can fit in is going to have power requirements. It's going to have a specific purpose in mind. Because now that we're telling them, we want it to be modular, what we're saying is, make components specialized. Make stations specialized. Make these things something that you have to make a hard choice. Whether you want that command and control module, or the bed, or the holding station, or whatever else. There's going to be a reason for any of these modules to be picked. Now, that said, if some of them prove to be overly powerful, like, everybody wants, I don't know, a med bay in their ship. Maybe they're going to need to talk about how much power does this take, how much of a disadvantage does this actually give to put this versus something else. Or it might just become de facto, hey, this is what people put on ships. Is that a problem?
Well,
I don't know.
My concern is if you have like 5 different weapons in an FPS, just for example, you got a shotgun, you got a rifle, you got a dual pistol setup, and you've got like, I don't know, whatever else you got there. You've got like a bolt action rifle and a semi-automatic sniper rifle, right? You got those sort of stock standard options. You can fairly easily balance those 5 things to be good in various situations, bad in others, and have sort of no reason to say everybody just runs around with an op, right? However, if you were to say, okay, each one of those categories is now going to have 5 subsets, trying to differentiate each of those subsets is now going to lead to having more differences overall, which is going to make it harder to avoid having much less useful options. Like when you go, why would I use this shotgun which fires really hard and does a lot of damage but has a really low reload, when I could just use a sniper rifle that does the same thing but from a much longer range. So I'm just pointing out that when you get into those granular areas, it's much harder to avoid that one's useless because this one's superior in all the situations where that one's supposed to be superior. So I'm a little worried. I'm a little worried just because they've increased the difficulty. Not that it's impossible, but that they've increased the difficulty bar they've set for themselves. If they're allowing more modularity, it means they have to be even more careful with how they set up these various things so that it's not like, well, everybody fits their ship like this if they're going on a combat. Everybody fits their ship like this if they're going to be C2. And it just turns into a copycat thing.
Oh. To be perfectly fair, when we start talking about things like C2, that's a single station. That's a single option.
For a command, let's say for a command ship. Just take a role in combat and say, well, because everything has been so granular, people have min-maxed it out to where this is the best thing. And I'm just saying it's harder to balance that when you have so many options, that there are just going to be some that are subpar.
Forwards, size, weight, and power. If it's going to be so granular, then the base model might be a lot smaller, so it can fit in more places. It might require a lot less power, or have a lot less weight, so it doesn't impact your flight characteristics as much. If you want the deluxe med bay in your Cutlass Red, you will have about 20% less top speed, for example. So there are a lot of areas they can balance it outside of what the station itself does. If a ship doesn't behave as well, if it can't fire all its guns because the med bay is just sucking down the juice, that's where you're going to get the balancing. And we're kind of ahead of the game. We've not seen the modularity yet to know whether it'll be a problem. But you're right. StarCraft is a prime example. There are 3 sides, and everyone complained about Zerglings until the Terra Marine rush kicked in, right? So it's always more difficult, more options, but they have a lot of experience at it. So it's kind of a test it, make sure it works, make sure it's not unbalanced, and then roll forward.
And let's be blunt, there are going to be road bumps.
Yes.
I mean, there will be situations where people look at it and say, well, it makes absolutely no sense not to have this particular module in this ship at all times.
Yeah.
And if they find those things, that's why we have testing. And
We're
all part of an alpha here.
There's probably some weapons control module that's very useful if you're doing a lot of missile and torpedo stuff that is going to be in almost every retaliator, for example.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully they're not super cookie cutter where somebody figures... I mean, maybe they will be when we first get them, right? that very likely could be the case. And it's just going to take a while to get everything balanced out. So let's take a look at the ones that are here. There are a whole bunch of different ones. When we look down at the crew stations and things like this. So we've got shield management, radar ops, electronic warfare, communications, scanning, avionics and CPU management, power management, and navigation. Are there any on there that struck you as like, how are they ever going to make manning that station be an interesting task?
I'm really curious how they're going to split out the pilot and the navigation. Because, let's be fair, in a game like this, generally speaking, your pilot is the one who's going through the wormhole or picking the star system. A navigation officer will be interesting from a gameplay standpoint. I mean, Star Trek, you kind of see it, the guy picks it, hands it to the guy to go fly it, but not in something like TIE Fighter, for example. If you were flying your TIE Advanced, you don't want someone, putting points on a map to tell you where to go. That'd be boring as hell.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, the question about navigation is how that ties specifically into C2. If there's a meaningful connection between the navigation person and the rest of the fleet, so to speak, or whoever's actually doing all of the here's the radar, here's all the people, here's all these various things. Navigation might be something very different than what we're thinking so far as plotting courses. It might be much more about threat identification or
And these
But
might
isn't
not
that
even be
a
stations
different station?
that you have manned at all times, right? These might not even be things, because basically, if you look at the interface, it kind of looks like they have multiple things available. Like this is obviously got the shields on the right here, but it's also got shield priority and let's see, is there anything else on here that helps my concept? Maybe not. But I mean, maybe they'll set it up so that, for example, navigation isn't something that you do by itself. You'd have a navigation station right next to something else, and when you need to check on your fuel usage and plot how far you could get with the fuel that you've got left and figure out where your point of no return is, then you head over to the navigation station to do that plotting, or to see, does this use more fuel to get through these jump points or what have you. And then you just, otherwise it's left vacant. So there's some that might be used a lot more often. Obviously, like turret stations or radar stations and things like that in combat. Shield management might be very important in combat.
Yes.
I did want to address something very quickly about this in YouTube chat. Sandy Apple was making a concern that all ships will be functionally the same, but just have different looks. That's a misconception.
Yeah.
There is a functionality of bridge stations, which is something that we're seeing on multi-crew. Those bridge stations may see some similarities because the action is similar. The ship itself will be very different. The capabilities, the hard points you're talking about on the outside of these ships are not modular. You're not going to be able to take a retaliator and say, okay, well, this has my torpedoes.
Yeah.
And then say, but instead I'd actually like those on a constellation. Not going to work. You don't have the launch bay. You don't have the ability to do it. They're not
only that, they've got
ability...
various options for PowerPoint, like power plant sizes. They're maximum sizes. So smaller ships are not going to be able to utilize very sophisticated electronic warfare suites, because they didn't point out that a lot of these stations might not even be available if you don't have the modules that go with them. Like, you can't have an electronic warfare station without an electronic warfare module installed into the heart of your ship, attaching and using up your CPU.
Well, and
via the
even
pipes and everything else.
Even on the bigger ships, like an advanced E-War suite may not be possible if you've also got the advanced shield management suite with the right prioritizations in that. It's just taking too much of the ship CPU. I mean, okay, realistically speaking, we all know CPUs can handle that no problem. Even the ones we have today would probably be fine with the systems they're talking about. But from a gameplay for fun standpoint, I could see that being the big trade-off. Do you want really good E-War, or do you want to be able to manage your shields and defend yourself more readily?
I've always thought that there was some kind of breakthrough that allowed you to easily, like, whatever future supercomputer they've been able to figure out is easily destroyed by this one weapon that you can, like, use some kind of weird electromagnetic pulse. It's unable to be defended, and so as a result, everybody has to use, like, Pentium Force or Core 2 Duos or something in all their ships, and that's why it seems unusual that we have to balance our CPU.
That sounds about right.
That's my
you could always go
rationalization.
You could always go with Dune, right? They had, if computers were too smart, they would become self-aware and then try to destroy all humanity. Mm-hmm. So we could go with that.
Yeah. So now, there's a couple other points on here. Do you think there's anything that's currently missing from the list of stations? Was there anything that you, well, I wonder why they didn't have that?
No. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say no. Because the stuff that they've given us can be modified in a lot of different ways. So saying there isn't specifically a torpedo station doesn't concern me, because there's going to be some way to do that from a gunnery station. Yeah. Saying there isn't specifically a jump point navigation system or station doesn't bother me, because that sounds like something you'd have in the navigation station. I think there will be ways to specialize and play within these various things depending on what you want your ship to do.
I thought of one, but just one. And that was a flight deck officer station for the Idris or the Bengal class or other carriers. Mm-hmm. Something that actually, sets up when a ship can depart, when it can land, raising, lowering shields, organizing that. I didn't see a great spot where that could be jammed in there.
You just want that one guy to come up and say, Captain, there's a Hornet leaving Bay 2 and they don't have clearance. You want to be that
Kill him.
guy.
Yeah, exactly. But it's something like that where you as the players, I mean, because the one thing from aircraft carriers is launching everything at once doesn't work. So you want to be able to organize who comes out first, what the order is, and a station like that might be handy. I guess you could say communications, but then again, I mean that goes back to college majors. I mean, you can jam anything into communications.
That's true. I was very happy to see that they had put Artemis Bridge Simulator as one of their research items.
Yeah.
So I don't know. You guys probably haven't played any Artemis. You're familiar with the idea, though?
Yeah.
I am not, so hit me.
Okay, so this is essentially a bridge simulator for Star Trek, for non-infringing ship.
I have heard about this.
Right?
Okay,
So you
yeah.
get each person at a different computer, and it works really well if everybody's got a tablet, because a lot of it is touch integrated. And so you've got different stations. You've got the weapon station, you've got the helmsman, you've got communications and science station, and then you've also got engineering. So everybody sits in your living room at a different place, and then the main screen, of course, is the big 48-inch plasma or what have you. And the captain sits in a big easy chair right in the middle. He doesn't have a station. He just uses the big station, and he says, "Put the front view on screen," and then somebody has to do that, or he gives orders and says, "Call up ship number 623. Now, it's really cool concept, and I am flabbergasted as to why it has not been done in a better capacity, because the guy who does Artemis Bridge Simulator is one guy doing it in his spare time, and even though it's amazing and he's made a lot of progress, it's still got the shittiest AI.
Yeah.
I played this game, and it's got, like, bad guys coming in, and they try to get to you, and they drive straight into a black hole, because the black hole is literally between you and them. There's no pathing. But you can still have a really fun afternoon.
Yeah. No, I can believe that. That would be a lot of fun. What you need is the multiplayer, where you can get the bird of
You
prey
can do it.
stations.
You can do it. You can have two bridge simulators, like, in different rooms on a LAN. Do that.
Then
Now,
you're set.
the stations in that game that were really interesting. Helm was actually pretty fun. Weapons control was fairly interesting, because you had to try to communicate with the science officer who was scanning the enemy ship to try and determine what their weakest frequency was on their shields. And then he would be like, okay, they've just changed their shields. You need to set it to alpha frequency or what have you. And then you try to aim for a specific section of the ship to knock it out.
Okay.
Communication was just boring, unfortunately. Sorry, Ahura. It was just boring. There wasn't much that you could do that have any impact. But my favorite was absolutely engineering, because you got this big set of controls that indicate how much energy you're giving to the different stations. And you only have, I think it was like 8 of these special cooling pipes that you could assign to any given thing. So you could assign all of your, like, half of your coolant to weapons, and you would be able to overclock weapons a lot more, because it could be cooled faster. And even if you put all your coolant on there, you were still able to overclock weapons so much that if you left it that way for more than like 30 seconds, it would overheat and explode. So you could do these
Fair
things
enough.
like, we're coming in for a pass, give us full overclocked power to weapons, and then you'd have to, like, pull Helm way down, and then if you forgot to change it, you'd, like, run into the... I can't turn! Oh, sorry, Helm! Sorry! So,
Oops.
that was a really
That would be
cool and
awesome.
fun station. I could absolutely see, like, an engineering-style station. And they also control damage control in that game as well. And you would sort of assign the 2 little repair bots that would go around your ship and repair all the various things. You'd see, like, a wireframe of it. And, like...
So
We know there are repair bots. We've
Yes,
been
we
told
do.
that
It's
already,
true.
so-
At least
So,
one.
damage control is actually the station that I thought was missing from this list. Because you
Okay.
gotta... I assume that they've mentioned, like, you can make repairs in space, and they've got this comprehensive system for certain systems taking damage. You have to go over to them, like, rip a plate out of the wall and change some wires to, like, bypass the such and such. So I was kind of surprised to not see that damage control, but...
Yeah.
Oh, well.
And that also argues for a little more fine-grained control. It sounds like in Artemis, what you would love to have would be 2 engineering stations with the responsibilities split up between them. So, maybe communications can be kind of ignored for the most part. So, you give it to the not tech-savvy person in the room. Or in the case of Ahura, you give it to the not tech-savvy person who's the cutest one in the room. and then you you have 2 engineering stations, one for damage control, one for actual engineering, or whatever it's going to be, so that you can chase that down, and it makes the game more interesting for more players.
Yep. All right, so that's a lot. We've covered a lot. We've got one more section to go, the main section.
Concern.
And man, when I was researching this section, I got a little angry. And when I get angry, I've got to vent. And when I vent, it's called a Bridger rant. That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, I have no music. Where's my music? There's my music. So, I got it. Here it is. So I was researching this, and I was looking at various threads, and one of them was talking about how the 300i does not have convergence on its weapons. It's not set up properly, and they made a big deal about it. In 9.9.2, they had set up this new system for convergence, and it was going to make everything better. But the 300i and other ships that have, class 1 turrets don't have convergence. And, okay, that seems like a legitimate complaint. I'm not going to dock you points for that, but for the other things that he said, I was going to... They were not a little rage-inducing. Let me see. Quote, I've been patiently combing the forums for some kind of developer response, some kind of acknowledgement. What do? They put them all on sale. What? Unquote. So, you're right. How dare they put a ship for an alpha on sale when it's still got bugs without telling you personally about the things that they're working on? Quote, if I had been in charge, there is no possible way this would be allowed to happen. No way are we putting these ships on sale. Unquote. Something tells me if you had been in charge, a lot of other things would be different, but the other thing that he says is, instead, pure crushing silence. What is going on? Did Chris Roberts get hit by a bus? No. Chris Roberts has better things to do than respond to your whiny-ass post about a game that's not even an alpha. Jesus, tap dancing Christ! You're allowed to have this much indignation on the day the game launches and no sooner. Seriously. I don't care if my freaking 300i isn't playable until the game launches. I'm going to be a little bit annoyed, but I'm not going to have a right to complain. It's not officially in the game isn't out yet. He says, I have declared a moratorium on my Star Citizen spending until I hear an explanation how these bugs will be fixed and what we've got left in the lurch for all of these anniversary sales. Well, you know what? If Chris Roberts came out to personally answer every question about every single bug, you would never get a game. So, that's all there is to it.
Understood.
And what's worse, there's a moderator on a thread in the Concern forum where this stuff is supposed to be talked about who answered and said, I am 100% certain they are aware of this issue. They simply haven't come out and said it because they are aware of hundreds of issues that they haven't come out and said we are aware of. Come on.
Maybe higher priority.
Yeah, there's so many priorities. Anyway, so if you didn't notice, the title of this section is called Addressing Concerns, in brackets. Because I don't know if you've ever been to the Robert Space Industries forums, but there was an epidemic, a pandemic of threads that use
That's a good way to go
in
for it.
brackets
It's kind of like a contagious disease.
It spreads, right? In brackets, they wrote concern. And then they would go on a rage-inducing, whiny post about some specific little area, and some of them would be justifiable, but they'd do it in such a way that made me want to just rage quit the forums and never come back, which is why I never go there.
My favorite concern thread was one titled Concern. There are too many concern threads.
Yes.
I love it.
Oh.
So...
And, to be fair, the gaming community as a whole was starting to look at Star Citizen's general chat forums as a toxic environment because of them.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a wrong interpretation. It was entirely correct. So overall, the move of, get in your corner and bitch over there is probably the right way to go, even if that might be, less charitable than the way that Cloud Imperium said it.
So I even forgot I had a title to this Bridger rant that I didn't mention. When Star Citizen is released, you have my permission to rage. So that is where I was going with that, basically. I mean, when Arena Commander is released, it's not even at 1.0 yet. God.
No.
Okay, let's go on. So
if I can download it.
The purpose of today's discussion is there are a lot of concerns, both in the forums and out, that have been coming up and saying, the Star Citizen thing may not be such a good idea. You should probably not spend any more money on it. So we wanted to talk about the various arguments and criticisms against Star Citizen, because there's possible that there may be kernels of truth that are justifiable, and they should be things to worry about. So we're going to discuss them from a high level and say, is this something that we should worry about? Is it justifiable? How can we expect it to be fixed? What do we expect to happen? Those kinds of things. So let's start by talking about these unique threads that we see in these games. Now, I don't know, it seemed like these are fairly unique. I don't remember quite seeing this level of these concern-type posts in other games.
No.
There is one place I've seen it. I will be completely honest. WoW.
Wow,
that wasn't an
class
expletive.
balance threads.
That was an acronym.
That was actually a thing. WoW class balance threads were one of the most toxic places you could possibly go in the community. I mean, you could find some hilarious things in the server, realm threads, all that kind of thing. Great arguments with people screaming at each other about who hates who. But the class balance threads were the single greatest source of just war garble before I saw the Star Citizen forums. There were people threatening to quit playing every week because of proposed class changes, because that was what was essential to their ability to play the game, was their shaman's 10 to 15% damage on Earthshock. That was it.
Yeah. Can I have your stuff?
Star Citizen has...
That's the correct answer to every one of those situations. Can I have your stuff?
Pretty much. Pretty much.
I'll buy your stuff for half the price.
I think Star Citizen suffers from that same sort of thing, and a lot of these concern threats really are that.
So you're saying they're concern threads about people's personal ship that they bought?
I think in a lot of cases they are. Now, not every one of them. There are concern threads that aren't, and we'll get to those. But I think the ones that are specifically focused on specific ships are more often than not people being pissed off because they feel that that one ship, which they have developed a personal attachment to, like a class in some other game, is somehow broken or gimped, and if it isn't immediately fixed and their personal concern is not immediately belayed, they must stop playing. But there's nothing for them to play. And then it goes back into their brain, and the rage cycle begins to spin up.
It's feedback.
I like that. The feedback.
It's
like as I heard someone saying at a party last night, it's like putting laundry detergent in a dishwasher. The result builds up, and then it spills out, and it's terrible.
Wait, we need to address something here. Gray, you went to a party last night.
I know, right?
That's unheard of.
You're officially kicked out of the nerd club.
Exactly.
So, actually, the way that I see this, I've been doing a lot of thinking, trying to figure out why does this seem to be happening so much here. And it makes a lot of sense the way that you talk about World of Warcraft, but I think there's a slightly different thing going on here. Because we're seeing this game, A, at such an early stage, and B, so much transparency. What you're seeing is a large number of people's first exposure to how game development actually works at the very early stages. Most of these people have only ever seen a game that is mostly complete get patched and fix bugs and balance problems. They have not seen games that are this early that are still literally being developed and coded new features in and things like that.
That sounds about right. People don't understand just how much goes into changing a game in production. It's a constant. I mean, okay, I'm gonna go for buzzwords here because why the fuck not? Okay, sorry, I just got the adult rating on the podcast. I apologize. So you are going to be changing things constantly. Everything's going to be a balance issue. And this does actually feed back into the class balance BS that WoW went through, because a rogue wasn't supposed to have another 50% damage on accident on the backstab. And it's the same thing here. They realized the Redeemer didn't have enough guns. They realized, for what they wanted to do. They realized that maybe the Aurora shouldn't have all class 2s. I realized that was an early bug as opposed to an actual problem, but it's a good example. The Aurora is supposed to be this catch-all ship. It shouldn't outperform the Hornet from the front, that kind of thing. It's a constant evolving process, and that's when we actually have Arena Commander to touch. Before that, it's, I don't think that the Reclaimer actually needs that spinally mounted railgun to correctly salvage things, so we dropped it from the design. It's they're going to be big changes, so don't assume there aren't going to be. And if you're going to bitch about it and you haven't seen the ship yet, take a deep breath and stop.
Not only that,
That's the
but
only
I think
thing you can do.
CIG has ruined people because they're getting so much information, more than normal, like way more than normal.
Yes.
There's no filter from CIG, basically. They have almost no filter when you compare them to other games that, like, you only ever hear anything from the devs after it's gone to the PR department and been completely vetted and said, yes, we're definitely going to announce this.
Not just vetted, sterilized.
Sterilized, exactly. Redacted. So instead, go ahead.
We have the greatest example of the lack of filter from SIG. What with the dick punchy machine?
That's true. You want to elaborate for those that may not understand the reference?
So we had Travis Day on to talk about Travis Day's job and what he does and everything else.
As a producer at CIG.
As a producer.
He's a very entertaining man.
He is. And I asked him about whether or not they would ever give a deadline again before the release of Arena Commander. And he said, we have a new machine in the office, and that machine is one that you look at it, and we call it the dick punchy machine, and you know exactly what it's going to do and what's going to happen. And yet, occasionally, you think to yourself, I want to mention a release date, and you put the quarter in anyway. And then, bang! It punches you right in the dick. To paraphrase, it was much funnier when he gave the delivery.
It's true. So those of you interested in checking that out, if you haven't already heard it, Tales of Citizens episode number 15. It's on the YouTube channel. It's also on the website, talesofcitizens.com. You can get it on the audio podcast.
Go listen to Travis Day.
Travis is hilarious.
Punched in the dick.
It's great.
Yes, yeah.
It's great. So
he's not as funny as Captain Twink here, but
so let's move on, because we're gonna be stuck on the dick punching machine for basically forever. There are a couple other complaints or criticisms. There are people who backed the Avenger that are feeling a little bit disappointed because all the other first wave ships, maybe with the exception of the Scythe, which is a very, very specialized limited ship, but the Avenger is basically one of those early starter ships that everybody would expect to be able to fly, and yet it's still just sitting in the hangar while CIG rolls out the Carrack and the Herald and all these other ships.
Yeah, but didn't it also come out like almost immediately with the hangar module? And they've given a lot of those ships second or third passes since then.
Oh, yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if the Avenger wasn't very popular when it looked like a kind of ripoff of the space shuttle with a gun. And so it may be a little further down the pipeline than some of the sexier ships, even if the stats, which are subject to change, look pretty good. I
did remember seeing that the Avenger is probably the next Arena Commander ready ship.
Yes.
Michael Rodriguez also in the chat there also confirms that he has heard that as well. So that I think is sort of justified, but we know that they're currently in the process of fixing that. Mm-hmm. And you might be right. They can look at the numbers and say, well, we're going to please a lot more people by making the 325A, combat ready than we are the Avenger. Yeah. I don't know what the numbers are. That could be complete BS. But theoretically, they can look at those and make those judgment calls of where to put their resources.
Yes. And we know that they do. That's something they said that they would, as far as the single-seaters go, and probably the multi-seaters as well, with the exception of maybe the Gladiator, they would be basing the order of things a lot on the number of purchasers, because they wanted to make the largest number of people more pleased with progress at once as early as possible.
Yeah, Army is confirming what I remember hearing, but I didn't want to go just by memory. The Avenger and Cutlass were confirmed for 1.0.
Yes.
That is what I thought I remembered, but I didn't have a source. So now here's another interesting point, I guess you could call it. CIG doesn't value our/my opinion anymore. We're no longer part of the process. And this is somebody who said, early on when there were only 50,000 backers, I was one of 30 people who actually used the forums, and therefore my voice was responded to more often by CIG employees. That's the way I interpret this.
Okay.
But I'm going to drop a bomb here. I'm going to drop a bomb.
Statistics.
Yeah. I'm going to drop a bomb here. You were never really part of the process. I don't care who you are, and I don't care how much CIG says we're listening to what people say, because yes, they are listening, but they're designing the game they want to design. No, yes. I mean, there's going to be some pressures for the community really wants this, really wants that. I mean, the community had that big petition to get the Freelancer redesigned. To be honest, I think all that did was push up the redesign of the Freelancer by a couple of months. It just made it a higher priority. I'm pretty sure that was going to happen. Whether they made a huge stink about it or just some people going, I can't really see. Because in playtesting, it was going to be determined that the Freelancer has a real big problem when you try to shoot things with you can't see, right?
Or maybe the gunnery station has cameras over those guns and it's even better than you expected, but that's out now, assholes.
But my point is, there's a reason that game designers design games and Joey from your mom's basement doesn't design games. And it took me a long time to realize that, because for a long time I was the guy on the forum going, these devs don't know what they're talking about. I've been playing games for like my whole life, and I know what a good game is. But no. After having watched a lot of GDC discussions, after having read a lot of game design books, after listening to a lot of game developers talk about their art, their academic study, I've come to the conclusion that people don't know what they want. They don't. Seriously, I'm not kidding. You, the one listening, you don't know what you want. You think you know what you want, and that information can be valuable, but a game designer can take that information and create what you actually want with it.
Yeah. And
it sounds really pretentious to say that way, but I'm just going to have to stick with that.
And there were some valid points made that, people are being listened to.
Yes.
The Redeemer got weapons buffs. Joyzy was mentioning this over on YouTube, because there was, in fact, a huge amount of outcry about, hey, look at these numbers, look at this balance of how many guns on this versus Constellation.
The gunship,
CIG said, oh, you know what, maybe we should add more guns to that. And they responded. The fact is,
and I'm not saying people
and they happened
are wrong.
to say yes that time around.
I'm not saying people are wrong. I'm just saying that if you had a game design process where you just put it to a vote, you would create a terrible game. Uh-oh. What feed? Which feed? Which one's down?
It's yours, Bridger. Your feed's down, Bridger.
XSplit Broadcaster is what's currently being displayed, but we can catch this in post, right?
Oh, we'll figure it out. So you guys aren't seeing it, but I think everybody else is fine.
Okay, we're good then.
So that brings us to the next piece. Star Citizen's bad press. Recently,
I love Star Citizen's bad press.
I don't even know if I want to say the outlet, but you guys probably are familiar with these various articles that you may have seen linked to various places, like 10-ton clickbait. 10-ton hammer. I'm not even going to link the link because I don't want you to go there. The article's not worth reading. Don't worry, I've combed the article for the relevant arguments, and we're going to talk about them now.
And actually, I liked your relevant argument because it's erroneous.
Yeah, Calathulu, let's talk, because you've played a little bit of Elite Dangerous. These articles make a lot of comparisons to Elite Dangerous, saying Elite Dangerous asked for less money, it's delivering sooner, and
True.
What's going on? Well, how come Star Citizen's 2016 now, or whatever it is?
Totally different model. Elite Dangerous has private money. The exact same model Star Citizen was going to follow until, we gave them nearly $67 million like a bunch of chumps. So they have to deliver. They've got a publisher that's basically saying, get it done, get it out there, make some money. They're going to, and so what they've done to get it done on time is they've cut features. I mean, the Elite Dangerous fan base is pretty pissed about these changes and what they've done to what they're doing versus what they promised. Things like no more single player. You have to always be on there. Osane on YouTube is saying, no, please no, not that discussion again. It's not a discussion. I am dictating. You shall listen.
Wow. This friendly conversation with our listeners have just turned into a ruthless dictatorship. Awesome.
That's my I call that, family planning. All right. So so basically ED cutscene, very different.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Comparison goes. So, right off the bat,
We'll fix it in post. There we go.
Oh, hey, I see things.
All right.
There we
All right,
go.
we're
There
back.
we go. Now we're live.
Basically back. Sorry about that,
Beautiful.
guys. I'm not sure what quite happened there.
Well, Twitch is much better than it was.
Hey,
XSplit, sorry.
Spectrum satellite searching for signal. That popped into exactly
This
the
is
right.
strangely pertinent.
that's absolutely perfect.
Oh no, I screwed it up again. We're gonna get everybody back. Up. Callie's got to go up there. Gray's gonna go up here, and we're back. All right. Sorry about that, everyone. Theoretically, we're back here, and we will be getting right back into our discussion.
All right. So,
brand new
I had-
version of XSplit, which is great in a lot of ways, but then just crashed on me, and I have no idea why. But don't worry, we've got everything under control. So
and
back
we'll catch
to
it in post.
back
again.
back to Elite Dangerous. So yeah, that's a
Yep.
very interesting point about how it's got publisher money because it didn't
Yes.
raise as much as Star Citizen. And I've actually sort of been waiting for release to see what the actual outcome is because I was
the other
worried. It
caveat-
sounded like there wasn't a lot to do in it.
Yeah, the other caveat that Andreas brings up is Elite Dangerous was in development 2 years before Star Citizen's Kickstarter. So they've already taken more time to deliver less than promised. And I like Elite. I like the game. I like the publisher. I really actually do
Concept
enjoy
is
it.
good.
Concept is great. It's very different than Star Citizen. I mean, the procedurally generated universe is massively different than 100 systems to start, but it's a totally different game. You can make some comparisons for dogfighting purposes, and that'd be about it. And even then, the flight models are wildly different. The intentionally gift yaw, for example, in Elite Dangerous. But the point is, they've had more time, and they have a different funding model. It's going to crap out. They're in a very different place, and making that comparison is going to crap out. Let's try that.
Okay, so let's move on to the next criticism of Star Citizen that we've seen in these various articles. This one said that Star Citizen, I'm not quoting here, I'm paraphrasing. Star Citizen originally only asked for 500,000. Why does it need more than 60 million? Why haven't they stopped asking for your money? I'll take that one because they said to the people that said, we've made a lot of money. Should we stop making more? Should we stop asking for and just sell packages from now on to new people? And overwhelmingly, I think, like over 2/3 of the community said, no,
Yes.
keep
It was
making
close to
awesome
80, I
ships.
think.
We want to keep buying them.
Yes. Although, to be fair, 400,000 backers since that point haven't been able to voice their opinion, except that there are 400,000 backers who couldn't have backed since that point.
Yeah. So the other point that I think Gray wants to make is that they originally also sought private capital investors as well.
They did. This is an important thing to note, is that Star Citizen initially said that the reason they were doing the Kickstarter was to seek private capital investors and a publisher.
And prove that
Outright,
there was actually a
a
market.
publisher. And when they realized they could hit that $25 million mark, at which point they could make a very basic skeleton of the game, and that's an important qualifier, a very basic skeleton of the game. Without a publisher, they said, well, screw it, we're not going to have one. They dropped on its head the idea that they would have a publisher at all at that point. And from then on, all we're paying for is more features, more development, more people all over the world that are doing the work. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Now, well, whether people want to ask whether it's moral, if they're allowing certain people to spend lots and lots of money when they couldn't afford it, or whatever else you've got there, and debate all you want about that. Honestly, what they're doing is allowing people to pledge to support the development, and they're allowing there to be a little more interesting blend of things when launch happens. But you have to understand the balance of NPCs to players to understand what this is intending to do by letting people have specializations off the bat.
Yeah.
So
it's not desperation. It's not a money grab.
No.
It's a wish to actually have a little bit of variety.
And at the same time, there has been a lot of quote-unquote feature creep, where the argument has been made that the backers who originally backed the Kickstarter deserve recompense, or the ability to get a refund, for example, because they backed a game that was supposed to be out by now, and it was supposed to be a lot simpler, or by early next year, or what have you, when now it looks like it's more like late next year, or early 2016 at the best.
2017, 2018, sorry.
Yeah, over the course of any given podcast, it'll go up another 5 years. But the point is that, you know, some people are saying, hey, we backed this thing that was supposed to be here sooner. It was supposed to be simpler. Now it's turned into this gigantic thing that will never get off the ground. How justifiable, how realistic do you think that argument is?
I think it's full of crap, personally.
Well, that's one way to put it.
If you want to try to claim that the game will never launch, there will never be Star Citizen as a persistent universe, there will never be the complete thing that they're promising, I encourage you to stick your head back in the ground and stop watching their YouTube channel, because clearly you never saw any of their demos.
That's true.
Yeah.
For that matter, you've never played Arena Commander, or never bothered trying. You've never looked at their release schedule. This list is going to continue until I shut myself up. These people who are saying that it will never release are idiots. It may have some things that they want that won't be there at launch, like, let's say, manual planetary landings. We're watching one of right now on the video screen.
Yeah.
Those aren't going to be a thing. Yeah. We know that. We're going to have set landing zones at the start.
They gave me a cool buggy thing in my Aquila, so I should be able to land wherever I want.
You see, that's the disconnect. And what you're saying right there is the problem. People are claiming, well, I have something that could potentially be used for X feature. Mm-hmm. Why am I not being allowed to use it for that feature?
Short answer or
and
long
the answer is because that's not something they promised yet.
Yeah,
yes.
That's not something that they said would be in at launch.
It's like what you just asked for is like 100,000 lines of code, buddy. So back off.
They're asking about procedural generation of planets and the ability to have, what Elite Dangerous has in a lot of ways, that expanding constant universe. And you know what? They've promised to look into it. They've promised to have developers spend some money and figure out what to do. And they've said blatantly it will not be in at launch.
Yes.
It will not be part of launch. And the people who are screaming that, this will never get off the ground, it's too ambitious, don't seem to realize the fact that the things that they feel are too ambitious, they're saying they won't put in at launch.
Yeah.
It'll get there, but not right away.
They're self-limiting.
In addition, you have to understand the system that they've talked about for instancing, because I was very skeptical initially about how the hell are they going to make this MMO environment and also have, actual real physics and actual real combat from ship to ship, not using Eve's orbit system where you don't actually have full control over your ship and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because that's the reason that you can have so many people in Eve, why you can have so many people in WoW, why you can have so many people in all these other MMOs, because the actual interactions are fairly simplistic. You're not directly aiming your spell in World of Warcraft other than like the 180-degree cone in front of you, right? You don't have to worry about that. But, when you get to PlanetSide, and that's one of the things that made PlanetSide so amazing, is because they took that direct action gameplay and they scaled it to 100, 200, 300 people at a time in a small location. That was an amazing achievement, and they built an entire engine around that. So how is Star Citizen going to do it? Well, when you understand how their instancing system works, in that the whole world isn't going to be rendered in real time everywhere, and they're just going to pick out chunks of space and drop people in there and make them on the fly as needed, you realize that it requires a lot fewer resources to do that. And that makes it much more possible. But anyway, that is itself untested. So there's still a chance that could have run into a huge 6-month delay. Just try getting that off the ground. We'll see. I have hopes that it'll be easier than that. But
which is why they've stopped giving these estimates. You know, now they have very large windows of who might have something. Yes, exactly.
But
they got tired of it eventually, you know?
The other thing that sort of overlooks is the progress that has actually been made. You can look at the FPS module that they previewed, and in 6 months they'll probably release an FPS testing module that'll be like a space station or something. It'll be basically the equivalent of Arena Commander, but for FPS, and we'll be able to play it. And you can see Arena Commander itself and how they've been updating it and improving it over time. It's way better than it was originally. And when 1.0 comes out, that's going to be way better still. So there are obvious...
the new targeting system where you drag the little reticles over the top, adding that skill base to the...
You can actually strafe now properly. There's so many things that have been added, and they're not little things. They're not little things. So... Anyway, so progress is being made. So people that are doom and gloom and saying it's never going to come out, I think they might be underestimating the kinds of shortcuts they're taking into making an MMO. But here's the next criticism. And somebody in the chat, Josie, said, Bridger, you're just wallowing in all of the worst negative complaints. Yes, that's what we're doing. We're addressing these concerns today.
That is the show.
Our job is
the
to
show
wallow.
where Bridger comes back and bursts a vein in his brain.
Yes, we're wallowing in these negative complaints, so you don't have to, Josie. You hear that? You don't have to go and look at all these things. I can give you the TLDR, and you can get mad just right there at your home computer. You don't have to go out into the whole wide internet world. So the next, a really interesting point that I didn't quite see coming. The modular approach of Star Citizen, the hangar module, the FPS module, the dogfighting module, the planetside module, and eventually bolting all of these things together isn't going to work well. They've done this for marketing and speed, but it won't be as good of a game because these things will be bolted together instead of designing them from the ground up as a cohesive experience. Gray wants to take this one. Go.
I want to take this person and just shake him. I just want to shake him. Have they ever coded? Have they made classes in Java? Do they understand that you should have things that do individual little things that you then bolt together? This is best practices for coding. What this person wants is a monstrosity.
And you have two different monstrosities in this one, because you've got this whole object separation where each of these modules is in itself a separate minigame. But then when you look at game design as a whole, I mean, in theory, you could have one world or one instance, and then like you zoom into the cockpit and zoom out, and then you get the FPS module, and all that happens at once, except the resources required for that to happen would break either their servers or your machine. One of them will just give up. It's a terrible idea. So why they went with the modular approach is entirely about what resources can your system handle. And that's pretty much it. Your system, their servers, whatever it is, but bolting them together is exactly what you should be doing here. We already know that you're going to have limited FPS in the Arena Commander dogfight because you have ship-to-ship jumping apparently. That'll be fascinating to watch, but it's not going to be as hard as if they made the whole thing with one engine.
You mean like Star Trek 2 ship-to-ship jumping?
I'm guessing it'll be a little more complex than that. I'm hoping not, but maybe. Maybe a jetpack? I don't know.
Even MUD's used object-oriented programming. Thank you.
Yeah.
What is that? Bruictus. Okay, I got it. So yeah, I mean, I think that Gray hit it on the head. This is just a lack of understanding about how computer programming works. I thought their sort of divide and conquer approach was actually really well executed. Basically, they got various teams and said, I'm going to hire a team that specializes in AI and AI interaction. And that's what team is that? I can't remember the name of it now off the top of my head.
Moon Collider.
Moon Collider. Yep, yeah. Moon Collider. And then they're going to hire another team that specializes in first-person mechanics and like weapons and things like that. And so they've got Ilphonic doing that. They've got another team in, I think it's Montreal, that's doing all of their web-based stuff. So all the stuff that hooks into the database that you're going to be able to go into the website and adjust things that affect the game itself or connect the chat to the in-game chat. All of that stuff, you get people that specialize in that kind of programming. They've done it before. Then you've got the main teams that are working on the brand new, rewriting the engine to do all these physics and space things. So that, to me, is a really smart idea. It's going to make each one of those projects superior because you have people that are specialized working on it. And it's only possible because we live in an era where you can call up these people and have video conferences and show them what your progress is and talk to Chris Roberts and say, here's what we're planning on doing. And he can send you back a thing that says, here's what I like, here's what I don't like, I want you to change this, and maybe we could do something with this over here. And we've seen those. They're in the jump point files. You can see all of his conversations with people about design and I like the way this looks, but Misk needs to have this sort of an appeal. So we need to back that off, use that kind of a flair for, Drake, and Misk has this other kind of appeal. So those kinds of things are great because you have one visionary directing multiple studios. That's as long as he's not coming down to tell this guy when the 300i is going to get convergence. Sorry.
Yeah, well,
but if he doesn't do that, Bridger, that guy might not spend another $40 on an Aurora.
Yeah. Sorry.
So, if I can take this next one about all the time.
Okay. Let me set it up then. So, this is the one about Star Citizen having enough money. So this is a different approach to having enough money. Oh, I'm sorry. I see. All the time spent making and selling these ships is time better spent developing the game. I have seen that thrown around in a lot of places. Callie, is this justified?
What the ever-living fuck is wrong with you people? Seriously.
I wanted to find
who in their right goddamn mind
say yes to
thinks that the person that's marketing this shit is the one that is programming Arena Commander, the FPS. I mean, you've got full goddamn exposure. You know that there's a marketing team that does their thing. And I promise you, that
personally
marketing
met
team...
Sandy. I know she exists.
That marketing
She's not a
team
hologram.
Does not, in any way, shape, or form, have anything to do with the code, with development, with the design. They've done fuck all, except market. That's their job. That's what they do.
You're talking about some sort of division of labor.
I am, and with a company the size of SIG, they will divide the labor. I would love to see this in the next Around the Verse. Have Sandy and the other marketing people sit down and just start to write the code. I'd pay good money. I would pay good money to watch, and then we'll compile it, and I'll pay good money for that. How? Why? Who hit that person in the head very hard? Because that's the only logic I have on that one.
Something tells me we could just sit here and continue to listen to Callie react to this idea specifically and be entertained for another 10 minutes. But I'm going to pull the plug on that one because we are on a time limit.
That's a good call. That's the right call. I agree with that call.
So let's go to the next one here. Now, this one is actually interesting. It kind of gave me pause. Star Citizen already has enough money. We already talked about how they said at $25 million they don't need a publisher, right? They expect they could probably make the game for $25 million.
Also true.
Seeking more money is therefore irresponsible because if the product does fail, remember this is a pledge, this is a Kickstarter, this is a potential success, then even more money was wasted. If they didn't stop now and they got $100 million, and it turns out when they go to put everything together that they come into some major problem and half the company quits because somebody goes on heroin and becomes a dick and nobody can stand working for Chris Roberts anymore, or he dies in a car crash and nobody can stick together anymore because it's too sad, just take the worst possible situation and say, okay, now there are an extra $40 million there that got wasted that didn't need to be wasted because they already had the $60 million. That's an interesting perspective and one that I couldn't immediately go, that's bullshit. Because it does seem to have a little ring true to it. Is 60 million enough, Greg?
Is $60 million enough money? Well, I mean, if you're going to say that a game, any company in a capitalist society should say, our product is sufficient at this amount of money, we suspect, and there's no reason to have any other cash on hand, and there's no reason to develop any other features or pay any other people, sure, we can say that's enough. We can also say that, your gas should cost 75 cents a gallon and there should be no profit made off of it. And we should also say that, anytime Microsoft makes a new version of Windows, it should just be a patched version of Windows XP because that was good enough. I think what you're looking at now, hey, look, there's no Bridger. There we go. He's got a cat.
I was abducted by a space cat. Beware.
I think what we're looking at now, when you're asking, seeking more is irresponsible because the product does fail, we're way beyond that point, guys. If the product does spectacular product, we have Arena Commander. If they really wanted to, they could release a shooter in its current unpolished.
They released the source version of what was that? Since the one from Microsoft so long ago that was the source code somehow got released to the community. There's still people playing it to this day because they went and modded servers to make it still possible to play. It's crazy. All right. So,
but to be clear, I don't think this is even remotely possible that at this point they would fail. We haven't even seen the single-player campaign, which is apparently going on playable and moving along through that chapter.
Yes.
This is important. These are things that are happening behind the scenes that we are not actively watching because they don't want to show us the whole storyline as it's being made and spoil the whole damn thing.
Because when they show us the whole storyline, idiots come out of the woodwork and say, it's clearly not, we need to fix it because it's... Yes, we know it's broken because it's not done yet. Okay.
But
it's not there.
But to sort of get back on point here, when they're talking about has enough money, I think that's crap. Because they've shown us every time when they get more money, when they get more development funds, they hire more good people, they contract more studios capable of doing good things, they put on the docket improving some of their current product, and they put on the docket putting something that is reasonable into development. And note, that doesn't mean at launch, it means into development. So what we're paying into right now, what we have paid into, are features that will not all necessarily be in at launch.
We're probably going to get
talking about
several free expansions because they've already been paid for, essentially. They've already been promised.
Effectively so. Well, I mean, when you start talking about procedural generation, or you start talking about free landing on planets or other discovery elements that they have said, yeah, we are working on those. They probably won't be at launch, but they will happen.
Yes.
That's where this money is going.
And
at this point, what we're looking at is they could, with that $60 million, say, okay, pull the plug, we're not doing any more crowdfunding. And we wouldn't get all sorts of really awesome features after launch. Or maybe we would. But I think that having more development funds to this company that has proven that they're being at least as responsible as they can be with a very experienced team of people, I don't think there's a problem with that.
Well, the good news is that when you're going to have the funding to make procedurally generated planets, for example, in future versions, maybe not at launch, but maybe 6 months, 12 months after launch, what that means is that you can plan for it while you're making the base game now. And that is super important because rewriting a huge chunk of your game to implement new stuff is very expensive. If instead you write the stuff now, taking a little bit, an extra 5 or 10% more time than you normally would, will save you huge amounts of time in the future just by making sure that there are correct arguments for all these classes and things that you're making, getting into programming terms, that you're planning for these other things to get bolted on later. You're basically creating a section that is eventually going to have more bolted onto it. You're saving so much time if you have those plans in play. So,
but it's long-term planning, not the short-term reward,
right.
Which we know as Star Citizen backers is never acceptable. I must have it. I must have it now.
Oh yeah, Absolutely. So the next one here, the Javelin reveals how greedy CIG really is. They imply that they, quote unquote, needed to sell Javelins for $2,500 in order to discount the starter packs. But that's not true. Here's the dirty little secret that only I have been able to figure out. They could have just discounted the starter packs because it's a digital good and it doesn't have any physical costs. What about that? Huh? I'll take this one. Just because they could discount something doesn't mean they always should. When you discount something, you lower the apparent value of that thing, and more people will demand it at that cheaper price. Okay? If somebody made a book, an ebook that they wanted to sell, and you said, well, you could just sell it for $2.50 a copy instead of $5 because it didn't cost you any more to make each individual copy. Well, that's true, but then you devalue the product from $5 to $2.50, and if you ever tried to sell it at $5 again in the future, people are like, well, you sold it for $2.50 before, why are you not selling $5 now? You're just being greedy. You can't devalue your product and then revalue it. What they did here was say the product is still worth $40, $45, whatever the starter pack is now, and but here's what we're going to do. In order to lower these prices, we're going to offset them by having people purchase these other things for an extra large amount, and that way they maintain the value of their product at the level they want it to be, while simultaneously giving new backers a good deal. Hopefully new backers, a good deal. Yeah. So to me, that is a great compromise over this guy just saying they should have never made the Javelin and instead just made it all cheaper.
So we've seen that phenomenon with the Steam sale. Because how many of you out there, and be honest with yourself.
Yeah, as much as I love Steam sales, I think that argument is probably true. I wait to buy games a lot more often now.
You wait for Borderlands 2 to hit $10 before you went on it, and then you're kicking yourself when it's $5 6 months later, even though you finished it.
I bought the first Batman Arkham Asylum for 50% off, and it was amazing, and I was so excited to play Arkham City, and I waited for it to be 50% off again.
Yes. So I get, from a business standpoint, I get absolutely why they would not want to offer a pre-release product for less.
Hey,
maybe after the game launches.
Nathan White says, I love Chris's games, but his movies were kind of meh. No, today we're criticizing Star Citizen. You will not criticize the Wing Commander movie. That was amazing, okay? At the end, when he showed up. No, it was a terrible movie. I'm sorry.
It was awful. I said that has criticisms all its own. We can make a show about that.
We did. We talked about it on a previous show. I don't remember which one.
We can do better. We can do a whole Mystery Science Theater 3000 style.
My God.
You just freaked Gray out. Okay.
The screen.
So let's go back to this last one, because this last one almost deserves a rant entirely on its own. Merchants should offer things for a fair price.
Well, no one held a gun to your head and said buy it, so they do.
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to. This is a fairly common, unfortunately, misunderstanding about what people are saying when they say merchants should offer things at a fair price. Okay, first of all, let me do one disclaimer. What I'm talking about is a free market with competition. And right now there is competition. We've been talking about Elite Dangerous, and I think that's a fairly good comparison to Star Citizen, where you could say Star Citizen's business practices are abhorrent. I'm going to get my space kick elsewhere. That is entirely possible. Star Citizen does not have the monopoly on space combat these days. There's been like a gajillion games that all launch at the same time. You could play Eve Valkyrie when that comes out.
If that comes out.
Oh, is there? I haven't heard anything about it. Is there problems?
You should.
There's some. Yeah.
Go
look at the internet. Claw your eyes out a little bit.
Okay. So anyway, the point is that if you don't like something, you don't have to buy it. The problem that these people have is, I don't want to pay that much. Therefore, they should offer it for less. Well, if that's how life worked, I would get a lot of shit for free. I would get a lot more stuff for free.
We just talked about Steam sales. You can wait for release, give it a couple of years, let the price drop, and then bingo, buy what you like.
Because what that implies is that there is such a thing as a non-relative, an objectively fair price. But that's not true. I could say as a consumer the fair price is whatever I think it is worth, and then the merchant could say, well, no, I think it's worth this much because I put this much work into it, and these were my costs.
Overhead.
And then I have overhead, and I should make this much money because it was a difficult task, and we're a market leader, or we are a good brand, or what have you. The place where those two meet is always the market value of the thing. When there's enough people buying the product at that price to keep the merchant in business. That's how capitalism works. Pick up a book called Basic Economics. It's worth reading. It was good. It's on Audible.
Or, the Freakonomics intro is also good and entertaining.
Yeah. I read it a long time ago. I don't remember much about it, though.
You'd enjoy it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So things are priced fairly. That's the ultimate statement.
Yeah,
If
that's
you
what we
don't
have to
wanna
end
pay
on.
Okay.
Yeah, when are we going to get a humble bundle of Star Citizenships for pay what you want? Good question, Ashley.
Oh.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. All right. Guys, any final comments on any of this? I mean, some of these things are just misunderstandings, but the problem is people get so mad about them. That's what really drives me insane. I don't want to demonize the people that have these concerns.
There is one thing I would like to say, which is a little bit of demonizing.
Okay.
If you work at 10 Ton Hammer, your work is bad,
Oh.
and you should feel bad.
It's true, because those were hit pieces that I think were either not well researched or were on purpose, like yellow journalism. They were purposefully rage-inducing in order to drive clicks. That's what
Or
we call
someone's off
clickbait.
their meds. It can be all of the above.
I was going to say, why not all of them?
Why
yeah.
not all? That's a
But
good
to
question.
be fair, I think that 10 Ton Hammer has finally graduated into the realm of actual journalism. Look at all the lack of fact checking that CNN or Fox or all those
Of
great
modern day
organizations-
journalism,
no.
yes.
They're now cable news.
Walter Cronkite
Exactly.
is turning over in his
See?
grave.
The internet is finally catching up with the mainstream media.
Yeah, there you go.
Or the lamestream media, depending on your personal political views.
All right, so I think with that we have had our extra long comeback show.
We
will
sure did.
We will be back again in 2 weeks.
And thank you for the Mystery Science Theater suggestion. We'll see about that.
We'll see what we can do.
We'll take a look at that. We will be back in 2 weeks. December 21st, we'll record our next show. You can find everything about us on the website, which is talesofcitizens.com. Space Cat is just shedding all over me here. I need to go and get one of those space fuzz removers, the lint remover rollers. I have a special space version because I wrote space on the side of it. But keep in
Look at the
mind...
plus side.
Yes.
You have the first hanger pet.
I do, apparently.
There we go.
And it's a ginormous one, too. It's a mutated globe of a cat, is what it comes down to. You want to say hi? Say hi.
No, that's right. Claw him. Claw's face. Claw's face.
There you go.
Angry space.
All right, so just a reminder, Tales of Kid Crimson, there's a link in the show notes. That is available, and that is great. It's really fun to read, and we're going to be talking about it next week. So if you don't want spoilers, check that out. Or I might just be doing a reading for in the next week or so. So maybe you'll just listen to it on the podcast. All right, guys.
Or we talk about the Karak. We could talk about the Karak.
Definitely talk about the Carrack. That's going to be coming up. We got a lot of stuff to
That'll
catch up on. Have a good one, everybody.
Bye.
Oh, I love this score. Who did they do this? This isn't John Williams, but it might as well be.
And that's why you get the physical CD copy that comes with the game.
All right, we are done. We are done. I don't know if we're going to have an after show today. 'Cause holy moly.
Well, our show was the after show.
Our show was the after show. What is it we were talking about that I had to get us back on track because we were going to be able to talk about it for forever?
I was ranting about people making a claim that, oh, what was it? Oh, yes, time spent making and selling ships is time better spent developing the
Oh
game.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I'm actually really excited. I'm gonna go. My plan for tomorrow is to spend a little time trying to do a voice recording of Tales of Kid Crimson, because I've been wanting to get into the voice acting business on the side, and that's one of the reasons I built this giant, well, not giant, very tiny but very soundproof studio down here.
Awesome.
And so I'm going to try to make that be part of my demo reel, as it were.
Very cool.
If it works out well, maybe I'll do every fiction story they've got on there over time, and sort of add them similar to the lore episodes we did for the boot camp.
Have you gone to your improv classes to work on your voices?
Well, let me tell you, see, I do a really good old cop, see? Yeah, see? It's going to be curtains for you, see? Yeah, no, I don't actually do it very good.
Nah, I'm with you. All right.
But, yeah, well, I guess we'll find out, won't we? If it turns out to be crap, I won't release it, and then you'll know. I'm hoping I can do better.
Fair enough. See,
first...
what I suggest, the way I got into voice acting, kidding, was to read the children's books to my daughter, which all require separate special voices.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so you can start with that. You could narrate "Go the fuck to sleep." See,
Samuel L. Jackson has already done it. I cannot top. I don't have a very good. Get these motherfucking snakes off this motherfucking plane. No, I can't do Samuel L. Jackson. I just can't. I can almost do Morgan Freeman. I can almost do Morgan Freeman.
I don't believe you.
Ever since I was a little boy, people have enjoyed the sound of my voice.
That's the Colonel from KFC.
Fine. Are you saying I cannot do people of color? Is that what you're saying? I'm not. Because I can do a brown dog really well.
Tracy Morgan, I'm sure, is in your wheelhouse.
That's the best I can do.
Fair enough.
But yeah,
I did like how the YouTube chat devolved to socialism. That was entertaining.
What? Against, you mean, as opposed to capitalism? They just make everything $2?
It doesn't matter. The point is, there was a lot of socialist talk in there, and anti-socialist talk, and communism is socialism is capitalism. Okay.
This is how we know it's not TL's general chat, because no politics.
Yes.
Andreas, this isn't our first show. We're back. This is our 18th show, but it is our first show in a long time, actually. That's true.
It's been a while.
It's been a while.
Been quite some time.
Yeah.
So, I do like this Mystery Science Theater idea. I think we should try to make this happen.
For Wing Commander? We have to do it riff track style, because we can't actually stream the movie, but we can record. We can even stream our recording of it. So we'll all turn the movie on, but have no audio, and we'll just record our reactions live. Everybody can sync it up together. All right, everybody pull it up on Netflix at the same time.
And press your play in 3, 2,
all right.
1.
First,
Big Rocket, go now.
No. You need to start by getting to where the MGM lion, starts to roar, and then stop it right before he roars, and then from there we'll all play at the same time. Actually, I don't know.
There you go. I like that.
But
that could work.
If it's universal, you need to do it
technically
right.
Doesn't break any copyrights.
Yeah.
Technically.
I'm just describing the MGM lion. We're not showing it.
And rawr. Oh shit! Nope, it's gonna get pulled.
Jonathan Lorman. That's a great last name. If only it were real. You could be. There's a guy on YouTube, Jonathan Lorman.
I see him.
Do you need to know anything about the Star Citizen lore? That's literally my last name. That's great.
Oh, I love it.
Oh no, there was something else I was going to be talking about, and I can't remember what it was. That I tried to avoid talking about because we were going to spend a gajillion years on it. Oh, well, it's not important. Yeah. Oh, for those of you that are still here, feedback@talesofcitizens.com. If you have any questions or topics or things you think we should talk about, that's a good place to send them. We don't get a lot of mail there, unfortunately. We're not big enough to get lots of people that have confidence to send us stuff. So send it to feedback@talesofcitizens.com. The delay is about a minute on YouTube, I believe. 60 seconds, maybe a little over the lunner.
Yeah, it's in there.
All right, I think I need to log off here and get. Yeah, I'll bring some pictures of the basement, some like before and after shots. I think we have some of those
That would
I
be
can
awesome.
show off next week very briefly. I didn't want to do them this week. We just had so much to talk about, so much Star Citizen to talk about. All right.
We should probably also try to get TeamSpeak up and try to get that meeting running.
Oh, yes, that is important. All right.
Go to your meeting, guys.
Have a
I
good
say
one,
we get in
everybody.
there, give them another 10-15 minutes, and get some food real quick.
I am still playing 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. I can give a rundown on that in the after show after next episode.
That
For now, I've got to go. Sounds like the dogs are yelping, so I'll talk to you guys later.
Your dogs are barking? Is that what we're getting
They
right
are. I've been sitting here for so long that my dogs are barking. All right. Talk to you guys later.
All right. See you later.
See you soon.